Now, I've been doing two things extensively for the past couple of weeks. The first is FlutterFlow. I've been working very heavily with FlutterFlow, building all kinds of apps, looking at various features, teaching you guys how you can best take advantage of the platform, how to build the apps of your dreams, and some of the things that you should avoid. The second thing is ChatGPT. This is a very smart and clever AI bot that can pretty much answer all kinds of different questions. It could be a philosopher, a software engineer, a nutritionist, a doctor, you name it. It seems like regardless what kind of question I throw at it, it knows how to answer it just fine. Now, ever since I noticed that FlutterFlow itself is built using FlutterFlow, and now that I've been using that very interesting AI bot that can write code for you and help you solve all kinds of problems, I figured, wouldn't it be cool to combine the two? Wouldn't it be cool if I can try to clone FlutterFlow with FlutterFlow and with the help of that very smart AI bot? Even if I won't be able to clone the entire app, it would be interesting how far would I get. And so in today's video, I want to show you how I try to clone FlutterFlow inside FlutterFlow using the help of ChatGPT. Now, before we get started, the apps that I'm going to be building today are going to be available on my Patreon page. And on that page, you can view and/or clone all the apps that I've built so far. You're going to see a link to it in the description below. Now, the first thing that I did was ask ChatGPT for an overview of the steps that I need to complete in order to build out an app where a user can drag and drop various widgets and then preview the app right then and there. And here's the result. Here's an example of a user interface that allows users to drag and drop various Flutter widgets and then previews the resulting app on the screen. So it told me I need a canvas element, I need a palette, I need a preview window, I also need save and export buttons, and a widget properties panel. And it actually gave me exactly what I needed. This is exactly what I need in order to build this app. This is a very high overview, obviously, but it's a very good starting point. And so we need a canvas element that's going to be where the user is going to be drag and dropping the different widgets, the palette where the widgets are going to be, the preview window, well, in this case, is going to be the same as the canvas here. And you also need a couple of other things, the properties panel and the save and export buttons. And then it tells you a couple of other things. Then I went back to it and I asked it to clarify something. So I said, how can I implement part 3 with a live preview of the app in Flutter? Remember, part 3 was this preview window. I wanted to know, how can I do it? Because I've never built it before. So it told me to implement a live preview of the app in Flutter, you will need to do the following. Okay, so it gave me some instructions. I need to set up a Flutter project, implement drag and drop functionality, generate the Flutter code, run the Flutter app, and update the preview window. Okay, so lots of technical things over here, and we're going to come back to it. But first, I went back to Flutter and I started to kind of design the app that I wanted to build. So my first attempt was going to be an app that looks something like this. It's going to have 3 columns. So here's the first column with the different widgets you can drag to the second column. And the second column is basically this column here, right? This is this middle column here. And that's going to be displaying different widgets and it's going to be previewing the app. And we have the last column that is the properties panel. And so on this side, we have a property panel. So if I select something, it shows me some of the properties for this specific element, depending on the element, right? If I select an icon, it's going to have an icon. If I select a column, it's going to have a column. So it differentiates exactly what's happening. And so if I run this app right now, this is what I will see. All right, so here's our app. And as you can see, we have the icons here. And I'm using just random icons. Assume these are, FlutterFlow icons with text, images, etc. Now we have the icons, we have the second panel here, and when we have the property panel here. Now the problem with this app is that these icons are not draggable. Okay, we should be able to drag and drop these icons. The second problem is that you cannot do the dragging with FlutterFlow. FlutterFlow does not support this as of yet, and there are threads on their community, people asking for functionality, but it's not there yet. And I went back to the bot and I asked it, give me an example of a user interface that allows users to drag and drop various Flutter widgets to the canvas and then previews the resulting app on the screen. And it told me to create a user interface that allows users to drag and drop various Flutter widgets onto the canvas. I need to use draggable and a drag target. Okay, so draggable is basically a way of making any widget, draggable. Exactly what it says. And a drag target is an area where you can drop those widgets. And so immediately I realized that I need to make each of these widgets draggable. So right now it's not draggable. And then this area is going to be my drag target. And so I went ahead inside my app and I created a widget. Well, I created a couple of widgets. But the first widget I created was based on the code that it gave me. And that is a widget that turns any kind of widget into draggable. So it basically returns a draggable. It wraps a regular widget with a draggable. And so I created a bunch of random widgets. I have like 5 widgets here with random icons. And then I have 5 random widgets. So I have like 3 text widgets. I have a container. And then I have an image with just random icons here, just to see if it works or not. And I went back to this left panel here, and in this grid view, instead of having those other built-in widgets, I included my draggable widget 5 times. And as you can see, that draggable widget here just has a random icon here. Now let's go and run this app and see if it works. And so here's the app. We have these random widgets, okay? And now as you can see, they're draggable. So I can drag them now. I can drag all of these widgets. The problem now is that we can't drag them anywhere because I haven't defined specific areas that can accept different widgets. And so just like my AI bot told me, I need to create a drag target. And I immediately realized that this app I'm designing here, this whole thing can be a drag target. Right now it's a column, but inside that column, I can have a custom widget with a drag target. And so I went ahead and I created a second widget. Now this widget is gonna be a drag target, meaning that it's gonna be accepting widgets that are being dragged onto it. And this code did a really, really good job of explaining to me exactly what I need to be done. It basically even created a skeleton that I use this inside my custom widget. And I went ahead and created this widget. Let me show you how the app looks right now. And here's the updated app. And if you drag this, you can see that there is a drag target. And what's interesting about it is that once I'm hovering over it, it's showing it to me. It basically creates a border around it where I can just drag it. And I just dragged a text element. That's a text widget. And I can drag another widget here. And this is another text widget. I can drag another one, another text widget. I also have a container and I have an image. So I can drag an image and now we have a preview. And this is real-time preview. This is exactly how the app would look if you go out and build this app and take the code elsewhere. And all of this was from this code, because what's interesting about this code is that it actually does everything. It creates a list of widgets, and as I'm dropping them, it's adding them, right? So look at this, on accept, it adds it to widgets, and then it's displaying it inside. And so this code does exactly what I want. And I asked it, how do I create a drag and drop interface, and how do I preview it? And another thing that's really cool about it is I can also rearrange widgets, right? So I can take this, I can drag it below, and now it's the last widget. I can take this, I can drag it to the top, and now it's the first widget. I can take this, drag it above here, and I can rearrange it. Now, remember when I was dragging it, it's creating a drop zone here. And I also asked the bot to explain to me how I can do that. So I asked it, how can I give a column inside the drag target a red border when the draggable is hovered over the drop zones? And so pure English, pure conversational English, basically in a format of something that I can ask a friend or a colleague or type in Google. And it gave me a big answer. So it told me like to give a column inside the drag target a red border when the draggable is hovered over the drop zone, you can use the onWillAccept callback of drag target to set a flag that indicates whether, etc., etc. So it generated the code again, except this time I'm not using a red border, I'm using a blue border, but it's the same idea. It's the exact same idea. So I really, really like that effect. That way I know exactly where I'm dropping the individual widget to. So at this point in time, the app is starting to come together. And we have the UI, we can rearrange the UI, we can drop things onto the UI. The next thing that we needed to do is we needed to build some kind of a property area where if you click on a specific widget, this area is going to pop up, and also depending on the widget, it's going to display some of the properties having to do with the widget. So for instance, with FlutterFlow, you see this all the time. If I click on this custom widget, we have custom widget properties. If I click on, this input string, we have, text field properties. If I click on this text, we have, text properties here. So you see that behavior all the time. And I wanted to start out by building this property area here. And so that is kind of how it looks like. Let's go ahead and run this app and see how it behaves. All right, so here's the updated app. And as you can see, we now have a panel here. So if I drag and drop something here, I can click on it. And I'm also displaying the type of widget in this example because I want to be able to change this panel as well as to change some of the fields depending on the type of widgets. And so if I drag an image and I click on an image, it's displaying an image. If I click back on text, it's going to display text. If I drag and drop maybe a container, click on container, it displays a container. That was for me to know that, anytime I click on a specific widget, it at least understands what's happening. But ideally, what we want to do is we want to display a different panel depending on what I click on. So this says text properties everywhere. I want to, display other things, right? If I click on an image, I want to display image properties. If I click on container, I want to display container properties. Now, in this case, I don't really need to get advice from the bot. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And what I did was I created various containers of different properties. So here I have text properties container here called text props here. I also have an image props, okay? And then I have the regular container properties. This should be container props, okay? I basically duplicated and changed the title as well as some of the names of the elements. Obviously, this needs to have a lot more elements, but this is good enough to for testing. Now, another interesting thing that I did here was that for each one of these containers, I have conditional visibility. And what I'm checking for is I'm checking to see if the active widget is set to something specific. So if I click on a text widget, active widget is going to be set to text. If I click on something else, that active widget is going to be set to an image, or it's going to be set to container, etc., etc. Now, you may be wondering, what is active widget? Well, active widget is actually part of local state. So if I go into my local state, I have various fields. So I have this active widget that takes the value of the type of widget. Okay, so whether it's image, text, or anything else really. And then I have a bunch of other variables here in my local state that I also hold different properties depending on the specific widget. So now let's go ahead and run this app. Let me show you how it works, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how I implemented this logic. Okay, so here's the running app, and this time if I drag, let's say, this widget, this is a text widget, if I click on it, we have this thing being displayed now. Okay, it says text properties. And it also has the initial text set to this. Okay, so if I choose another text field, I drag it up here, I click on Hello James, it's still text properties, and now it says Hey James here. And that is because this part understands what's going on here. Okay, so if I click on this, it comes back to Hello World. If I click on this, it says Hello James. Let's go ahead and drag something else. How about an image? I click on the image, image properties, okay? If I, drag and drop a container, click on the container, container properties, okay? Now, if I click back on the text, it goes back to text properties, and it has the text in there. So not only do you have a preview of the app that you can rearrange, you can put Hey James on the bottom, it's the last one. I can put the image maybe as over here as the last one. I can put it to the top to be in the beginning. But we can also click on a specific widget and we can get some information of it, okay? We can do that. We can do that here. And the way this is implemented is that if we go back to our custom widget, this is that second custom widget with the canvas, I basically have a condition that if you tap on a specific widget and it checks if this widget is text, image, container, it modifies our local state. So remember, I had a video sometime back where I talked about how you can access the local state, the app-wide local state inside a custom widget. This is very, very important. Otherwise, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, for your custom widget to communicate back with your app. And the way it's communicating is through this FF app state, this FlutterFlow app state variable. And I have active widget, which is this, this field here. And I am setting some of the values. So if the user clicked on a widget that's of type text, I set active widget to text, and that triggers the conditional. Remember, we also have some conditions over there. This right here, if you come back over here, this container, this text props container is only displayed if active widget is text. Okay, same thing for the other ones, right? So like this one, this is an image. It's displayed only if active widget is image. Okay, and then we have this other container, and that's displayed only if it's active widget is container. And so obviously this is something that needs to be done for all different types of widgets, all the widgets that you want to support essentially, and then you can just show that properties panel depending on the specific widget you are dealing with. And if we go back to our custom widget over here, we can see that I'm also getting the value of text. So, if you load the text, we click on it, not only the panel, the properties panel on the right-hand side is going to be applicable only to text widgets, but I'm also showing the text string. And then if we go back here, this text string is set as a hint text. So it's like this value that's there for the user to enter. So if you go back here, I type hello world, we see this hello world. Now, obviously, the next step would be for it to work the other way. So not only to display it here, but if I want to change something like hi world, it's going to change it here as well. But it's still interesting how much I was able to do in just a couple of days with the help of FlutterFlow and with the help of ChatGPT. Really, some of the responses that it was giving me have been right on. And another thing is that it was able to really, really well understand what kind of questions I need. And it also contains context, right? You're having a conversation. So initially you asked maybe a Flutter widget. Later on, you can just say widget. It knows it's a Flutter widget because of the previous things you talked about, right? Because it has that context. And so it's amazing how much you can learn. It's amazing how much you can build with the help of this tool. And it's amazing that you can essentially go out and clone, even some of the more complex apps like FlutterFlow. And so here's the final result. There's still lots and lots of things that we need to do. Obviously, FlutterFlow was not built in a day or even 2 days, which is how much time it took me to create this quick prototype. Obviously, if I continue working on it, I will be able to add more functionality, more features, more things. The most important thing is this preview here, really, and this is essentially the preview of the app. It's going to be very easy and like very trivial to create a button that's going to export the code or take all the code here and create a fully featured Flutter app. It's going to be very, very simple to do that. And so it's just a question of putting in more time, building more features, more functionality, but the foundation is for the most part sitting right here in front of you. Now, if you are interested in taking your no-code knowledge to the next level, you are interested in mastering this, you want to build complex apps, you want to build useful apps, you want to build amazing apps, you want to build apps that do incredible things that could be built without writing any code, or at least without writing lots and lots of code, then you definitely want to check out my Patreon page. Not only will you find there all the apps that I've built in FlutterFlow as well as in other no-code builders that you can view and or clone. You'll also get access to extra content such as live streams, Q&As, some of the interesting behind the scenes content, my in-depth masterclass videos, and lots of other things. But it's also an excellent way of supporting this channel and supporting my work. So if you have not joined, you're definitely missing out, and I sincerely hope to see you there as part of the community. This will do it for today's video. I really hope you've gotten value here. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. And I will talk to all of you in the next video.